How does retiring early sound to you? Probably pretty good if you're like many Canadians. But these days, you may feel like it's a fantasy given the rising cost of living. Well, DIY investor Moe Nejati is here to change your mind. He's aiming to retire at age 50 and says he's well on his way to getting there. Let's hear how he's making it happen and the lessons he has for others who want to do the same. You're watching Inside Investing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inside Investing, the show that helps you level up your financial knowledge and sharpen your investing skills. I'm your host, Brian Rogers. And joining us is Moe Nejati, founder of Moementum Finance. He has the ambitious goal of retiring early at the age of 50 and shares his journey with the YouTube community. Mo, thanks for taking the time to share your story with us.
It's my pleasure, Brian. Thanks for having me here.
All right. Well, the first thing I want to dig into, Mo, is what gave you the drive to not only pursue early retirement, which is a great plan if you ask me, but document your journey to financial independence on YouTube.
Yeah, the topic of financial independence has kind of interested me for a long while. And as we know, here in Canada, the education system, we do learn about finances and managing money, but it's not the topic that is talked about often, which is why when I kind of started gaining a lot of interest in this topic, decided it would be a nice way to document my journey, my learning along the way, share it with others who might benefit from it as well. Throughout this journey, there's a lot of lessons to be learned, some mistakes that I've made along the way. And I thought, if I can share those things in simple terms, others may learn from them and hopefully are not going to repeat those same mistakes as well. On top of that, of course, some changes in the family. My wife and I recently had our baby, and spending time with her in the past 3 months or so, it really gave me a lot more kind of proof as to why I've been starting to pursue the journey of financial independence and retire early.
Well, congratulations on the new addition to your family.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, that sounds great. I think a lot of people think that there's a major lifestyle change. Has that been something you found? Like, how have you found the lifestyle of pursuing early retirement as being compared to what you thought it might be when you first started?
You bring up a good point, Brian, and I was one of probably those people who have thought along the same line. But in reality, when I started pursuing that this path, I realized that it shouldn't be that way. It's up to an individual, up to us to define our path, how we want to get there. For example, from my family and I, we make sure that we set aside enough money for the pieces that interest us. Like, we do our travels every year. We do discretionary traveling. We have a budget along the way that allows us to know exactly where our money is going. We are very intentional about how we spend our money and why we are spending it. Learning about the journey of financial independence, retire early, how it can be simple. It doesn't have to be complex. It's more about being disciplined. It's about uh, being patient and not wanting to pursue get rich quick schemes. As we know, like these get rich quick schemes that are out there, they have a lot of allure to them, and many new investors, once they hear about them, they want to get there as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, not realizing that if it's too good to be true, likely it's not real, or there's a lot of risks involved.
You mean you can't become a millionaire in 6 months?
I mean, if you really are diligent about it, probably that's something that you want to stay away from it. For us, always the journey in the past has been wanting to be patient and really not sacrifice our own lifestyle too. We don't want to live under the rock and really sacrifice and really deprive ourselves from all the joys of life. Like, these are memories that we can build with our family, with our loved ones. We don't want to sacrifice that for the sake of just pursuing and reaching a certain number.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm excited to hear about the details. But before we get into our conversation, just a quick note to our viewers. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, TD Direct Investing, so you don't miss an episode of Inside Investing. Make sure to let us know in the comments what you think about today's episode and what else you'd like us to cover on the show. With that being said, let's get into it. So, digging in a little bit further, how did you decide that retiring at age 50 was a reasonably ambitious goal that you wanted to pursue?
The age 50 was actually kind of decided based on crunching a few numbers. The first thing that I started with was making sure that my family and I, we have a clear budget of where our money is being spent. You know, if you don't know where your money is being spent, how your money is kind of being distributed, you won't know at the end of the day, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, how much you have kind of leftover, so that you can deploy it effectively by investing in the stock market. So having a clear budget was really the first step. And after we have looked into our budget, we started noticing that roughly we had about 35 to 40% amount that we could deploy into savings and investing. So that was really a good number and healthy number for us to play with. We make sure then from there onwards use some of the rule of the thumb kind of notions out there. Many of your viewers probably have heard about the 4% rule. It's fairly common out there, that talks about if you intend to retire early, as long as you have a portfolio set aside, investing it in a safe manner with a reasonable rate of return, you can withdraw 4% in the first year of your retirement from that portfolio, and from there onwards, adjusted for inflation, continue to do so. And that allows you to have enough funds to sustain your retirement years. Now, of course, there's some caveats to that, depending on how early you retire, and how the market does. For us, we wanted to play a little bit more conservatively. We didn't want to be too risky with that. So that's where we decided to go with roughly a 3% rule. Obviously, as you lower this withdrawal amount, it gets less risky, because you're withdrawing less amount from your portfolio, maintaining and keeping a lot of the funds intact. In simple terms, what it tells us is that as long as we know at the retirement age what is our annual expenses. So let's say if our annual expenses at that time is $50,000, just for the sake of an example, we can simply multiply it by roughly 33. That's 3% withdrawal. Gives us approximately $1.5 million, which means in today's money, if we were to retire at age 50, we would have to have $1.5 million in a portfolio, giving us a decent return, let's say even an average of 7 to 8%. As long as we then withdraw the 3% in this case, there's enough money left over to continue to build over and build a larger portfolio for us.
All right, yeah, that sounds simple enough for sure. I like that you're giving us some specific numbers to work with and a simple calculation. No, thank you for doing that. I think our viewers will really like that. Getting into a little bit more specifics on how you do this, which investing accounts are you prioritizing as you pursue this early retirement goal?
First and foremost, we maximize our tax-free savings account every year at the beginning of the year. Once new contributions rooms are available, we max it out as the first step for us. Then we try to go ahead and try to tackle the rest of it through maximizing our registered retirement savings plan. Now, for me, I'm fortunate enough to maximize my RSP account, but for my wife, she has been in Canada for longer. That's why she had a much larger RSP room, and she's still on her path to working and contributing to her RSP to maximize that one out. Once those are kind of maxed out, there are other avenues to continue to invest. So for my case, because I still wanted to save and invest in the stock market, I opened up a non-registered account. These are taxable accounts, and I continue to invest in that. That's the account that I'm personally more actively investing in. For my wife, she is prioritizing her RSP account.
Well, yeah, you're painting a pretty good picture right now. Like it seems like a pretty smooth path, but I know the journey to early retirement can be unpredictable, with ups and downs along the way. How would you say you're progressing so far in your plan?
I'd like to keep track of the portfolio performance once in a while, Brian. I would say roughly about once a month. I log into my kind of tracker that I have and make sure like the numbers are updated, how things are going, are we on track and whatnot. Not from a lens of trying to panic or changing any of the path that we are taking. I'm fairly confident in the approach that my wife and our household is taking, but more so from it gives me the motivation, really that excitement that seeing the progress. It really can be kind of encouraging. Trying to also gamify this whole process. Thinking about it rather than maybe using this money, say, to buy a fancy gadget that maybe I might use a few times and I don't absolutely need it. Why can't I maybe redeploy that funds and invest it in the market? And then playing with some of those compounding interest calculators out there really can encourage you even more to see, wow, this fund is going to grow a lot more in 10, 20, 30 years from now.
That's excellent. Yeah, my son, I wish I could tell my son that advice. He's obsessed with going to the movies and watching the latest movie and things like that. Maybe I can get him to gamify to put some of that money into investing. All right, Mo, let's get into some of the key lessons you've learned as you pursue early retirement. The first is to start early and start small. What do you mean by that?
The most important probably gift that we all have, the value of the time, allows that money, the money that you're investing, to grow over time, year after year, day after day, months after months. And really, through the power of compounding, it actually can exponentially grow in value in terms of its monetary value. There's a beautiful graph that I'd like to share with our audience here. Take two different investors as an example. One investor, the first investor, say, starts investing at the age of 25. When they just turn 25, they start investing, and they continue to invest until the age of 65. And for this case, they are putting only $200 a month into their portfolio. The other investors starts investing 10 years later. They start investing at the age of 35, and in order for them trying to catch up, they start putting double the amount of that money per every month. So they are putting in $400 a month into their portfolio. Now, in our scenario, in this example, we're taking an average of 10% return per year. If that was the case, by the time that they both hit the age of 65, the first investor, even though they have put in a lot less money, in fact, if you look at all the duration of the 40 years that they've invested, they've only put in 96,000 throughout those 40 years. The other investor, throughout those 30 years, even though they put double the amount monthly, they have put in a much higher amount, $144,000 in total. But investor A still ends up having a much larger sum of money. And really the key differentiator here is the value of time. The compounding interest does its magic over time. And as you can see from the chart, it starts really exponentially growing. Hence the point, start as soon as you can, when possible, and try to start no matter how big. Because sometimes we just wait for that, well, if I only have this much large amount of money, then I'm going to get started. No, don't think about it that way.
All right, yeah, that graphic sounds really encouraging. I love to see that. What about those that are a little bit on the negative side towards this, or a bit discouraged? Some new investors might feel, though they don't have enough money to invest given the high cost of living, what would you say to encourage them that it's still possible to pursue an early retirement?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, Brian, is about building the right mindset and really being intentional about why you're pursuing this, why you want to do this. And really, I think positivity goes a long way. Really, when I first got started investing about 7 years ago, Brian, I started with small amounts of money. I never forget. I think I started putting in just $100, putting it in that tax-free savings account, and I was proud of that move. I was proud of that decision, and really starting to, as early as that time, starting to play with the compound interest. It really can, the gamification can really excite us. You can look at it like, okay, so I put in $100. How about if this money continues to grow at certain rate by 30 years? Okay, maybe not much, but how about if I continue to put in another 100, 200, $300 every week, every month? Some of those numbers you may not be able to do at this time, but still learning about that and being aware of the impacts allows you to plan and allows you to make some of those tough decisions that we talked about, the gadgets versus investing versus eating out, all of that.
I really love that advice because you even said earlier, one of the keys is you got to be disciplined and patient. And sometimes people hear those things, they don't want to hear those words because that's pretty hard, right? I think it's
Right.
definitely a big part of it, but also I like how you're saying make it fun. Make it fun, and I've done that too over the years. Look at how my account's growing, or I'm putting a small amount in, and I can see it accumulate over time, and it's amazing to see. Speaking of in terms of lessons learned for investing, the next lesson that you've learned is that you feel you can reach early retirement without trying to outperform the broader market by picking individual stocks or holding speculative investments, I should say. Why do you feel that way?
I think I learned my lesson the hard way, to be honest with you, Brian. I was one of those investors early on. I remember I started during 2017, and at that time, there were big kind of excitement about the weed stocks at that the time. Like, there was this the talk of the day at the time. And to be honest with you, some of those companies were doing, in terms on paper, the stocks were doing really good. And I don't forget, I was having this mindset to myself, like I was almost, I think, telling some of my friends, and I was new to investing, granted. I was telling them, you know what, it's a train that is moving fast. It's just a matter, it's going up, going forward. It's just a matter of just getting on the train. If you miss it, you're going to probably have to catch on in a different station, and probably you're going to miss on some of the gains, but better get on it as soon as possible. So I really started getting getting on it heavy with margin, borrowed money through margin accounts, and you name it. So really learned my lesson the hard way. The fact of the truth of the matter was, well, I'm not going to speak for all the companies that were in that domain, but there were so many businesses in that time that were not strong enough fundamentally. So it was really a hype in the market. It's one of those things that came about. There were a lot of excitement about it, and as a result of that, the fundamentals of the business were not supporting the valuation of the stocks. And while many people actually made a lot of money on it, there were many other investors who actually got burned down. And I think I was one of those ones. Then I learned through that journey that, picking individual stocks comes with certain knowledge. It comes with certain expertise. And I didn't have that expertise, nor did I have the time or interest. And as my journey evolved, Brian, I learned that, what, that's probably not the thing for me, not something that, allowed me to sleep comfortably at night, which is why I kind of decided over the years, gradually switching from all those covered call ETFs and penny stocks and dividend stocks and individual stocks to ultimately low cost index funds. They don't try to outsmart the other investors or outsmart the market. They're happy with reaching the average market returns. Some of the key benefits that really helped us along the way, Brian, with that has been the fact that ease of investment, really the sleep comfortably at night test, it definitely passes that for me.
There's some investors, they hear that. They hear that, okay, you want to get a market average return, and they think that there's no way they could get enough for early retirement. What would you say to those skeptics that are, saying you need more than a market return?
You have to have a long enough period of time because the markets go up and markets go down. You have to be patient with that. So it's not that if you just go with the average market return, you're guaranteed to retire early in 5 years. No, you may be lucky depending on what was your starting investment portfolio size. Maybe you can get there quicker. But if the market happens to just to have a poor performance over the next 5 years, it may not be possible. So you might have to delay your plans or have alternative plans. Definitely something to be mindful about. And a lot of individual investors, they think they're gonna outsmart the average return of the market. If they have been in this long enough, they probably, and if they look at it honestly, they probably can see back that while they may have had maybe some picks that returned really good, maybe double baggers or whatnot. There are definitely some funds in their portfolio that really drag down the entire performance. So looking back, it may not really, at the end of the day, really beat the market.
Interestingly, you've reduced your entire investment portfolio down to just one investment fund. Might sound risky to some, but why does it work for you?
In our quest for simplicity and our quest to have things more on autopilot, picking a fund that has that global diversification for us and does everything in one go, essentially to one single ETF, would be the way to go. My counter argument to a lot of those folks is that while on paper it may sound like it's one single fund, I want to be clear. This one single fund gives us diversified exposure to the entire stock market globally, including the US stock market, Canada, international markets, as well as emerging markets. And there are many choices like that out there in the stock market. You just have to do your own due diligence and pick the fund that is right for you. For our fund, it has more than 9,000 companies globally. So I beg to differ that it actually is not really risky in that regards. In fact, it's the fund's risk rating is in fact as medium, just because of the sheer volume of the diversification you're getting to virtually the entire world stock market.
Let's move on to your third key lesson about early retirement, which is that investing is as much about emotions as it is our investment choices. What do you mean by that?
And this lesson really was inspired by a book that I read a while ago. It's The Psychology of the Money by Morgan Housel. And in his book, essentially, Morgan Housel, he talks about really a lot of our money decisions are not really a numbers decision, but a lot of times it's a behavioral decision. And think about it, a lot of investors maybe panic. They panic and sell their holdings, their stocks when the market is down. Whereas behaviorally and based on, of course, history of the market, probably that's one of the best times, in fact, to invest. Or if at least you're not putting in new money, probably you don't want to sell. Probably that's one of the worst times to actually sell your holdings. Make sure to have a safety cushion. build an safe emergency fund for yourself. Typically, a lot of research suggests maybe 3 to 6 months of your expenses. For my family, we've decided to go at least with 4 months of our monthly expenses, and we've set it aside in a high rate interest savings account. Now, it may not really beat the inflation, but at the same time, we again go back to sleep comfortably at night. We are comfortable because we know that if, let's say, something happens, maybe one of us lose our job, or something happens that we need some large amount of money to maybe sustain our life or to pay for a large expense. Let's say if your car breaks down or things of that nature, as an example, at least we have that. We don't have to panic sell our stocks or our portfolio, essentially.
Is there any strategy or anything you use to keep your emotions in check?
One way to go about it is really trying to revisit and remind ourselves of that end goal. If the end goal is, let's say, in our case, to retire in 10 years, why would it matter if, let's say, the value of our portfolio goes down even by half today? We are not planning to retire today. We are not planning to even withdraw or touch the money today. If anything, because we have so much runway, it allows us to be more agile and really redeploy maybe some of our additional savings that we may have had on the side, or like other new money that we get, let's say a bonus or like a salary savings, or maybe sacrifice some of your day-to-day expenses and redeploy that toward investing, because maybe that's a good time to invest more and pick up more shares of those quality stocks or ETFs that you are currently investing in, and really maximize those opportunities. The other thing is as well, surround yourself with some of those I would say money partners, money coaches, or folks that have the same wavelengths as you, that are determined to reach similar type of goals. I think it can be really encouraging. You see how they kind of navigate through the ups and downs of the markets, how they go navigate through the day-to-day kind of life expenses, day-to-day life journeys. I think it can be really motivating. It can sometimes get lonely, investing in the market, especially money topic is something that is not often talked about. So surrounding yourself with those folks can be really beneficial.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, just on a personal note too, a lot of the things you said, like, having a coach, I agree with all those things. I even think just your own experience and learning. I don't know if you've ever done any paper trading. When I was first starting to learn investing, I was a rock star on paper trading. I would do 1,000 shares at a time and, I use margin and take all kinds of risks. But then when you actually put your own money on the line, you learn really quickly, okay, I'm going to slow this down a little bit. I just lost a bunch of my own money, by making a stupid mistake or ignoring diversification or anything like that. So I think being actually invested is a big learning lesson in itself.
Definitely, be from a behavioral perspective as well, Brian. Like that plays a huge role. Like the behavior changes when it's actually your money on the line.
Thanks for sharing some of the investing lessons that you've learned as you pursue early retirement, Mo. I'm sure you've got our viewers excited to start their own journeys. So on that note, let's take a moment to hop into Webbroker to show them how to start sketching it out. So if you click on the goals tab, and then you're going to go to a screen that looks like this, and you're going to go to get started. So I want to do a quick demo of just an example goal. So if I'm investing for, could be retirement, could be a major purchase, I want just my money to grow in general. We're going to choose, for this example, we'll choose retirement. Put our current age is 40, and income is roughly around $100,000. And I'll put the retirement age at roughly, let's go 62. So that's, if we've figured that's a good mark to shoot for. Compared to my current income, I expect to need, you can say I want just an amount you can make up. If you need a certain amount of income, you can do 100% of your current salary. You can do a little bit less. So depending on what you've decided, talk to your spouse or figure it out yourself on what you think you're going to need. Figure out your budgeting needs and so on. But let's go a little bit less than my current income. And we're going to name this goal the All Creative Retirement. You can be more creative with your names if you like. All right. And then we can go save and continue. And now we're going to choose a profile. This is our risk profile. And are we going to need to be really conservative? Because we wouldn't sleep well at night if we saw any movement in our portfolio and then we'd end up selling everything. Or we're going to be a little bit more aggressive because we know, we've got so many years left. Maybe we can afford to be more aggressive, and we can, put it into a little bit more aggressive assets. You can see which each one of these is made of. You can design the portfolio yourself to match this, or you can look at seeing if you can find mutual funds, or there are ETFs that are available that will match exactly these. And you can see it's breaking down the assets, the actual historical returns of the benchmark. So you have to look at some of the details of what this is showing. if you want a little bit more information. But this is just a guideline to help you fall into one of these categories of conservative, moderate, aggressive, and so on. And then you can also create your own profile if you want to do a custom approach. So let's choose, in this case, we'll choose aggressive because we have a long time frame. We have roughly around 22 years. We'll go choose profile and then go save and continue. Okay, so now this is going to actually ask you which account you want to use. This is a test account. I have only a few to choose from. I'm going to choose this one here. There's a self-directed RSP with roughly about 100,000 in there already. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I can add additional funds if I want to add more funds. And I'm going to actually really want to add, am I continuing to contribute to this? Because I'm, at the age of 40, I've got a little bit of available amount. We can afford $300 weekly. We're going to take that out of our paycheck, and we're going to add that into whatever funds we decide to use or assets in the account. We're going to go on save and continue, and then now we're pretty much at the last step. It's going to tell us, are we hitting our goal? And we can see on here, oh, look, it doesn't look like it is going to be even close. We're off by roughly about $1 million. So we can see, we might need to change some things. We may need to change our retirement age. Let's say if we move that up to 65. We could reduce our income slightly. So now we could reduce this. Maybe we only want 75,000. Let's see if that'll work. And then we know one other thing that we can do that could, help this number out a little bit is we can add more in. Let's say if we can do another $100 weekly. Obviously you're going to be able to do what you can afford, but you're going to have to change some of these variables to see if it will work for your plan. So if we go recalculate, let's see if that helps out a little bit better. Now we're much closer. We're very close to our projection of the 1.9 million. There are some assumptions built in here. It's looking at, how much you would need based on what you put in terms of your retirement income. And there's a level of return that is associated with whatever you chose as moderate or aggressive or conservative. So you can view these assumptions down at the bottom if you want to look at that. But that, in a nutshell, is how you can set up this plan, and it'll say, do you want to start with this plan? And once you click that, then that's going to associate it with that account. And you can see, are you on track with your contributions? It's going to always tell you over time, are you a little bit behind? Are you on track for that goal? And then you'll have that peace of mind of knowing that you've got this set up for the future. All right, Mo, we're going to have to wrap up the interview portion of our conversation, but we're not done yet. We're going to open up the floor and hear what our viewers want to know more about. Are you ready to take some questions?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Have more questions? Check out the links to the right and in the description below.